that like if you feel like you wait for the right time to train for your first marathon or the right time to start working with a coach or a dietitian, like you could be waiting forever. So that's one of the things that I've learned is that sometimes you just have to put yourself or whatever you're working on out there, right? Like get it out into the wild. You could always go back and change it a little bit, right? Like I can always go back and make edits.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. Thank you to Tracksmith for their support of For the Long Run podcast. Tracksmith is a Boston-based running apparel brand born from a desire to celebrate both the history and the evolving culture of running. Tracksmith recently released their fall collection, which was designed to celebrate the seasonal shifts as we find our rhythm this fall. I have been loving their Van Cortlandt long sleeve, which pairs well with the Alston half tights on a brisk fall day. Imagine a world where running injuries don't exist and every runner stays healthy. That's the world I want to live in, and that's exactly the world that Recover Athletics wants to make happen. Recover is the first prehab app for runners. It instantly generates custom prehab programs made up of strength, plyometric, and mobility exercises to help loosen tight muscles, get stronger, and run your best. Their team designed it with top physicians and marathoners like Met. It's guaranteed to make you a stronger and more injury-proof runner. If you want to fix your aches and pains, get stronger, and set PRs, go to the App Store right now and download the Recover Athletics app today. Welcome back. I have Stevie Smith joining me today, all the way from Buffalo, New York. Stevie, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Of course. So as has become a tradition that begun out of laziness, the first question is, who is Stevie?
Oh, well, this is an easy one. First things first, Stevie is a dog mom. If you don't know me or don't follow me anywhere on the interwebs, I have a doggo who will be 4 shortly. His name is Chance. He is a German Shepherd pit bull I rescued when he was a little potato, a couple months old. So he's basically my best buddy, upper management at my business. I'm also a small business owner, woman-owned business. I own my own nutrition coaching and consulting business, Stevie Lyn Nutrition. Kept it real, kind of like, you with the first question, kept it real easy and named my business after myself. So I am a registered dietitian. I am board certified in sports nutrition, and I am also an athlete myself in the endurance space. I grew up playing lacrosse. I was a lacrosse goalie, and I transitioned to long distance triathlon, the Ironman distance, but have also done a number of marathons and ultra marathon, long distance swimming. So the jack of all trades in the endurance world. And I am also an autoimmune warrior as well. So a long answer to what should be a short question.
I think that's the right way to answer this question.
Okay, good. Gold star.
Well done. Yeah, we're 1 for 1 so far. So today's episode will be for the long swim, bike, run.
Yes.
So you mentioned you started in a sport outside of endurance. When did you get the bug to do something different? And where did that come from?
Yeah. So, I played all team sports growing up, soccer, basketball, lacrosse. Lacrosse was my main sport, as I mentioned, being a lacrosse goalie. I hated running. I remember the mile in gym class in high school. Some of my phys ed teachers would be like, Smith, you're an athlete. You need to do this mile in under 10 minutes. That's how much I did not like running at all. So I went on to play 1 year of Division III lacrosse at SUNY Brockport. And it wasn't the same experience as I had playing lacrosse in high school. I didn't pick up a lacrosse stick until the end of my freshman year. And by the start of my sophomore year, I was captain and starting goalie on my lacrosse team and was captain on varsity for the remaining 3 years in high school. And it was just such a great experience being part of a team, working hard, having that discipline, but also having a lot of fun in sport. And when I went to college, and it's not, to say anything negative about my teammates or my coach there, it was just a different experience and I didn't enjoy it as much. So I retired from lacrosse after my freshman year and turned my focus more to school. But as I stopped playing lacrosse, I kind of stopped exercising because I was like, oh, this is an amazing break. I don't have to do these things. And that was cool for about a semester. And then I was like, this is not me, like I've always been active, it's been ingrained in me to move and really enjoy what I do and, be competitive. So I decided to start running my sophomore year of college, and I could barely run a quarter mile at a time. And that was in 2008. And then I transferred schools once I decided I wanted to take the path to become a dietitian. And when I transferred back home to Buffalo State. And, when I moved back, I kind of got more into running. And by 2009, I did my first road race, which was a full marathon. And that's kind of where the bug in running started. And I guess I say the rest is history, but I dealt with a lot of injuries early on in my running career, stress fractures and such. So I kind of retaught myself how to swim and bought a bike. And then that's where things really took off for me in 2011.
Very cool. So we share in that our first road race was a marathon.
Yeah, I know.
I think I knew that. Yeah.
We did it backwards.
We definitely did it backwards. We didn't do the marathon backwards. We did the lead up to the marathon backwards. Why did you dive in head first like that?
Actually, I was influenced by someone at that time. I was working the front desk at a local gym for a free gym membership, and I had been running a lot on the treadmill. And I know many people are probably familiar with Team in Training that raises awareness and fundraising for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And they were having like an informational meeting about the Buffalo Marathon there. And I was talking to the woman who held the meeting. And I said, oh, I'm thinking about a half marathon. And she said, well, what's your longest run so far? And I said, oh, I'm kidding. I've gotten up to like 8 or 9 miles. And she goes, well, you'll be kind of disappointed if you don't do the full. Like, I think you'll be pretty satisfied if you do the full. Like, the half just won't be enough. And I said, okay. And I had just recently lost my aunt to leukemia. So, it was also nice that, I was going to do this and support, their efforts in fundraising for that as well. So it was kind of like a win-win, because giving back and, helping others out, even if it's just running a lot of miles to fundraise, is something that's always been important to me. So yeah, that kind of changed the game. I said, okay, I didn't have a lot of friends who ran, so I didn't really know any better.
Do you remember race day?
Oh, I do remember race day. It's funny. I don't really remember the start a lot, but what I do remember is my childhood best friend came home to cheer me on. My mom was there. And then 2 of the friends I made in what I call dietitian school hopped in with me for like the last 6 miles and ran, walked, and they're both pretty fast runners. So my first marathon was not very fast, but they were like just such a great support crew. And I remember just kind of like that last mile you run through Niagara Circle in Buffalo. I don't know if many listeners are familiar, but I just remember that last mile and be like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. Like, I'm going to make it. Like, this is amazing. It hurts, but this is awesome.
And then
I remember I couldn't walk down the stairs the next day. I remember that.
So this was 2009?
Yeah, it was 2009.
And when did triathlon come into the mix?
Yeah, so a triathlon came in around 2011. Yeah, so a couple of years later. I did 2 or 3 other marathons in that time before I found triathlon. And kind of right when I found triathlon, I was also training to do Rock and Roll Nashville, which was April like an early season marathon. I trained through all of the Buffalo winter with a group. And it was probably the fastest I'd ever been, doing like my long runs, 7:30 pace. Again, I didn't really know any better. And I ended up with a pretty devastating injury. I stress fractured the neck of my femur. And yeah, it was pretty bad. I thankfully found an orthopedic who also worked for the Buffalo Bills and the Sabres. And I was telling him what was going on. And he looked at me. He goes, jump on your right leg. And I couldn't do it. And he said, you go to my office immediately. I'm calling them right now. Like, get an MRI. Don't do anything. And it was fractured so bad. He said if I had stepped wrong, I would have split the neck of my femur. So yeah, it was pretty gnarly. We learned a lot from that. So then I was out for 10 weeks. He like basically restricted all of my activity. And then I did my first triathlon that June. I signed up for a half Ironman to originally be my first triathlon, but I was convinced to do an Olympic in June. And then I did my first half Iron 70.3 in that July of 2011.
And then when was the first full Ironman?
The next year, July 2012.
So dove right in.
Yeah, I did 2 half Ironmans in 2011. And I remember the guy I was dating at the time, we're friends now. He was training for Ironman Lake Placid. And I said, I want to do that next year. And he's like, well, maybe you should get through your first half Ironman first and like see if you even like it. And a much younger Stevie, right? I'm 33 now. So it was like 21, 22. Math is hard. I was like, what? He said I can't do it. I'm going to prove him wrong. And I was like, all right, I'm doing Placid next year. I wanted to do it for myself anyways, but like that really sealed the deal.
What was that finish line like?
Oh, that was literally probably one of the best days of my life. Hands down.
How come?
I don't know if it was beginner's luck. It was like basically the only full Ironman that I've done that the weather was amazing. It was like the perfect day. If you haven't been to the Adirondack Mountains and Lake Placid, it's just a very special place. Of course, the Winter Olympics were there, and the finish line is around the Olympic speed skating oval, which like, how cool is that? Like you get to finish your full Ironman running around the oval. The crowds are great. I had a ton of friends. It's air quotes the hometown marathon being like 5.5, 6 hours from or hometown Ironman, being 5.5, 6 hours from Buffalo. So tons of people usually race it. There's always great cheering squads. And just, it's like such a long day for every athlete who does an Ironman, whether you're a professional finishing around 9 hours or you're one of the last finishers coming in around 17 hours at midnight. Like it's just, the energy is electric. The hills are hard. The course is relentless. Chew you up, it'll spit you out, but it's just gorgeous. And, from the energy at the swim start through the race day, and I always, for the most part, I think for most of the full Ironmans I've done, I've always like showered, ate, gone back out to cheer in the last finisher. It's like just their resilience and like, how dedicated, like that is a long day. Like going fast is impressive, but keeping your head in the game and keeping yourself moving for like 17 hours is just, it's incredible. So it's just an awesome experience.
Very cool. And where did the 50 miler come into play?
Oh yeah. So the only 50 miler I've done was JFK 50 miler.
JFK, yeah.
Yep. I was living in DC at the time, and what was it? 2013, I think it was. Yeah, that was a year where I don't know what it was. I just did all of the races. I think I did like 2 70.3s, a full Ironman, Savage Man. People in the triathlon world would be familiar with it, but it's basically an Olympic tri Saturday and a 70.3 Sunday, but it's gnarly climbing, like 6,000 feet of climbing. Like you get your name on a brick in a road if you make it up one of the hills, kind of like just the bike and the run are gnarly. So that was mid to end of September. And then in November, and I did Baltimore Marathon in October. And then in November, I did the JFK 50. So that was another time in my life. But I knew I wanted to try it. And I was like, well, I've done all this training for all of these other events because I did the DC Rock and Roll Marathon in March too. Then I was like, well, why don't I just use all of this fitness? Like my body feels good, right? And try the 50 miler. And, I did a lot of run walk training for it, which I know a lot of people who do the ultra distance, that's their jam. And then there's the people that are a little out of my league who are real fast when they do ultras, but I just wanted to do it. So I did the run walk training, and I ended up doing that in November of 2013. And I haven't done any other ultras because that was quite an experience for me. I'm slightly traumatized from still.
So you're crushing every race. You're doing the doubles. You're doing this. 2015, 2016, 2017, you're doing like a lot of full Ironmans, right?
Yeah. 2016 was the first year I did 2 full Ironmans in the same season. And I did that 2016, 17, 18, and 19, I think. But yeah, my last open marathon was in 2016. Yes. And then I took a hiatus from that. I love the marathon. I think it's amazing, amazing in a different way. I'm sure you can agree, just kind of from the journey and what you learn. And it's a very different experience compared to a full Ironman. I put them in their own categories, both hard, but just in their very different ways. But after 2016, I decided that I needed a hiatus from the open marathon and really focused on the 2 Ironman seasons to kind of get the ever elusive for me sub 4-hour Ironman marathon, which didn't quite happen, but we're okay with it.
And it feels like there was a culminating experience or a culminating event when you realized maybe you bit off a little too much. Is that true?
Yeah, that was when Ironman retirement came in. That's when I stopped doing Ironman in 2019. Well, at the end of 2018, I went on this really awesome trip to Patagonia with a bunch of my friends from DC, and we hiked all of the awesome hikes in Argentina and Chile. We had like a jam-packed trip, back to back, all of the good wine, all of the good meat, all of the gorgeous views and friendship. And when I got back from that trip, I just was not feeling right, not feeling like myself. But, at that point, in 2018, I had trained for 2 full Ironmans, which I stand corrected. I did not do 2 full Ironmans in 2018 because Ironman Florida got canceled because of weather. So I only did 1 in 2018, but I trained for 2. And I was in grad school full time, working a couple jobs. And I just didn't feel right. And thankfully, I had been using Inside Tracker since 2016. And I got some blood work done because I was like, well, we'll just check in. It's been a little bit, see what's going on. And some of those numbers were kind of drastically low. They shouldn't, kind of fell where they shouldn't be. So I said, all right, time to call, my doctor and take a closer look at this, kind of paired with how I'm feeling, make sure nothing major is going on. Well, long story long, after many more vials of blood, like 50 vials of blood, I came up with a high rheumatoid factor. And, within 6 weeks, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Originally, we thought maybe I caught something like Lyme disease when I was in Patagonia or something of the like, because I really had no other previous indicators that this could be an issue for me. There's really not any family history of rheumatoid arthritis, which there's a strong genetic tie to being susceptible to developing that, no underlying infection that caused it. So basically, they just kind of determined that stress created this, autoimmune disease. And that kind of, changed the game for me as an athlete. And that was early 2019. And at that point, I had already paid Ironman like $1,600 to do 2 races that year. So I still did that because I didn't want to lose my money.
So how did you rectify the feeling, I don't want to say unstoppable, but 2 Ironmans a year for the last few years into, okay, what does this mean?
Yeah. I don't know if I've even got that fully figured out.
Let's figure it out.
Let's figure it out. We're going to figure it all out together. I mean, it's one of those things, and I'm sure a lot of people who listen, identify as an athlete or a runner or a triathlete, whatever your jam might be. Like, it becomes so much of your identity. And I know, the community is great. It's a great way to stay connected, but also there's that fun and like you get that tempo run, right? And you're super, like, I always got kind of nervous for them, right? But when you nail those workouts and you're like, dang, I just did this. Like, that was awesome, right? Of course, there's always the bad workouts that you don't hit. I think, like, that was the thing I really struggled with 2019, still trying to train, right? Like, I felt like I was just trying to check the boxes to get myself through these 2 Ironmans, to get them done, to try and stay healthy. So it's still kind of a journey because I really do kind of struggle with my athlete identity at this point, because sometimes I don't feel like, like I miss being able to kind of push myself to that next level. So it was just kind of like a very abrupt change, but it could be worse, which I know like people will classify that as toxic positivity, but I'm doing it to myself. So I'm going to say it's okay. And I say it in a way that, I'm still able to do a lot of the things that I love to do. It's just that I've had to readjust my goals, realign my expectations, and really just give myself more grace, but also give myself more kindness, and really just be like, all right, like, you can't finish this long run because, your body is telling you that's a no. And like, you have to listen more closely. I'm sure a lot of us can, and you, Jonathan, can also relate with that. I think a part of training is stubbornness, to like get that mental toughness to push when you don't feel like doing it. And now I really, like, it's been hard to kind of separate those things, right? Like, am I going to do too much that I'm going to hurt myself and like perpetuate this joint damage? Or like, am I just being mentally weak? I think one of the harder things.
How do you decide?
Honestly, at this point, like I said, I really have let go of, like, I guess, athletic goals. And again, I don't want to make that sound like a downer, right? Like, yeah, it would be great to BQ, but I'm not hunting it like I used to, because I know that I need to be, like I said, realistic with myself. And it's just kind of like, any athlete, when something's not fun anymore, I mean, you don't get paid to run. I don't get paid to swim, bike, and run. So when it's not fun anymore, like, it's time to reevaluate. I kind of use those guidelines, like, okay, if this doesn't feel good and I feel like I'm forcing it too much, it's time to fold, like, whether it's the plan was to run 40 miles that week and it just, I hit 32, I just kind of put my hands up and say, okay, like, that's what my body's limit is, kind of weighing in not just the physical stress, but also the emotional and mental stress of everything else going on in my life too.
What do you do to, like, right? Because you're a fairly competitive person. Mm-hmm. You talked about doing the first marathon versus the first half marathon, or doing a 70.3 instead of a Olympic.
Yeah.
Is that like an itch you feel you need to scratch?
That's a great question, because I honestly feel like ever since, the RA diagnosis, I feel like I've had less of an itch to scratch it. And I don't know if I can give like a very direct way how I got to that. Maybe it's just, an outcome of listening to my body more, right? Like, my body doesn't, I've worked with an exercise physiologist, and, looked at the research, and like, it's clear, like, recovery takes longer for me now, especially in those fast twitch muscles. Like, at first I was like, why are my quads always wrecked? And then I, met with them and got this research, and they're like, yeah, especially muscles like the quadriceps, that big fast twitch muscle. I know my recovery time is slower. I know, like, my body gives me enough of that feedback, and, people with chronic pain, it's something that's like very hard to describe. But I think just, like I said, being more in tune with my body, that like, And it's a different type of pain than like pushing yourself in a tempo run. Thank God. Because like, well, I miss that pain of like pushing those hard workouts and pushing a long run. The pain from this autoimmune disease is different, but like just the right feedback that I'm like, I don't think I want to test that because, if I push myself a little bit too hard, I'm going to be down and out for the next 3 days. Like the risk reward thing, right? The reward is not worth it.
Totally. And so what I found to be really interesting is that while you haven't had the athletic year that 2015, 2016 Stevie probably would have imagined, your career has taken off in ways that 2015, 2016 Stevie probably couldn't have imagined. Do you ever reflect on that?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And yeah, it really has. I haven't really sat down and done a ton of reflecting on this year. My official launch of my business was New Year's last year, basically because I procrastinated so long because I was so nervous to like officially put it out there and like full on commit that I literally waited to the last day in 2020. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind year. It's been amazing. I feel very grateful. I'm excited to do a little bit more reflection on the year, like in the remaining days of this week. But, there's been moments where I'm like, wait a minute, is this real life? Like, is Shalane Flanagan like my bestie? Hey, Shalane, if you listen to this, I do refer to you as my bestie. But like, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm sitting across eating champagne and French fries with Shalane Flanagan. Like, somebody slapped me. I think I texted you, Jonathan. I was like, is this real? These are things that like even 2019 Stevie would have never imagined. I have had amazing one-on-one nutrition clients this year who have done such like amazing things. Of course, I work with mostly athletes. So we've had so much growth in, not just personal best, but also learning how to fuel, having a better relationship with food, like being okay, like accepting themselves, accepting their bodies, really respecting and finding joy in the sport. Lowered cholesterol levels, like those like non-glamorous things too, right? Yes. They've put in the work, and like being a part of the journeys of these individuals has been amazing. I feel like it's like, this must be what it's like to be a parent. I don't know. But I feel very proud. I find that joy. And it's kind of like, I've always loved cheering and spectating races. Even before I really kind of retired from racing, like I think it's the best. When I lived in DC, Marine Corps Marathon Sunday was like Christmas morning. I was like, all right, let me get my hydration vest. I got everybody in the tracker. I'm going to run to Georgetown, catch them here. Like just being on the other side to me is also so fun that, I think that kind of helps me kind of fill that little emptiness that I feel not crossing those Ironman finish lines like I used to. And a lot of it is also just, I don't know, I guess it's telling. And what I remember from my first marathon, right, is I remember who showed up for me. And I remember the strangers who cheered for me. I remember, my friend who tagged me in a Facebook post of an ironing board and ironing his clothes one day I did a marathon, and he's like, wow, we have pretty equal tasks. Like, I remember like those really like things that seem very insignificant and small related to my races. And, my mom standing in knee-deep water when I ran Ironman Maryland Marathon in coastal flooding. She was in knee-deep water while all of my friends were drunk cheering around her. Like, it's those things that I feel like, I'm very proud of my personal best and all of my hard work. But those things, I don't know, they just feel like the best. And there's so much negativity in the world, and there's so much that like we can put ourselves down for, that finding ways to like lift my friends up and support them. And same with my clients. Like, okay, maybe we didn't really like execute this day how we planned, but like, here are 2 awesome things that we did that day. Just kind of shifting that mindset. It's just, yeah, I get to do it every day for work, basically. So it's great.
Love it.
Thank you again to Tracksmith for their support of the podcast. I've been a fan of Tracksmith and their community-first efforts ever since my early days of running in Boston. As my miles increase again ahead of some big goals this coming spring, I'm definitely doing it in comfort and style with their gear. I'm also proud to partner with Tracksmith because they're going to donate 5% of your order value to the Michael J. Fox Foundation for all orders, and you'll also get free shipping. The Michael J. Fox Foundation is dedicated to finding a cure and helping those living with Parkinson's. Both of my grandfathers have or had Parkinson's, and I'm grateful of Tracksmith's support for something so personal. Visit tracksmith.com/forthelongrun to see some of my favorite pieces, and all orders that start from that page will contribute towards this donation. Recover Athletics is a supporter of not only this podcast, but also my own running. It was built in Boston by two lifelong training partners who got tired of aches and pains getting in the way of their training. In 90 seconds, their app will customize a program for your body and your training. I've plugged in some of my more common aches and pains, and I got a custom-built program designed to strengthen the muscles and tendons that will help avoid these issues going forward. Your first custom prehab program is free, and they have an unlimited free trial. You can get it on the App Store right now by searching Recover Athletics or click the link in the show notes. If you like it and want to upgrade, their premium subscription costs less than one trip to a PT. Give Recover a try today. Your legs will thank you.
I want to go back to something you said. This podcast will be airing on New Year's Eve. So Happy New Year, everyone who's listening. Hopefully 2022 brings you fantastic things, but it won't unless you go out and chase them. I step off my soapbox.
Right, I love a good soapbox.
Yeah, it's like my favorite thing is like the clock turns to the next year and people are like, this year will be different. And it's like, no, it's just like another day. It's another month. It's another year. It's totally arbitrary. Like you got to take the first step to making something new happen. And so on that note, I want to go back to what you were saying about New Year's Eve of 2020. And let's talk about inertia and taking that first step.
Yeah. So taking that first step, it's something that I've learned this year. And I've been working with a business coach mentor with my business, Laura Schoenfeld. She's been great. And it's a lesson I had not known New Year's 2020, but something I'm learning and I'm sure I can get better at is sometimes done is better than perfect, is kind of what I gained from that. Is I very much like things to be perfect, and I feel like it has to be the perfect time and the perfect moment and the perfect day to launch my business or, release this new guide, free downloadable I might have made or, whatever it might be. And this can relate to anyone that, like, if you feel like you wait for the right time to train for your first marathon or the right time to start working with a coach or a dietitian, like you could be waiting forever. So that's one of the things that I've learned is that sometimes you just have to put yourself or whatever you're working on out there, right? Like get it out into the wild. You can always go back and change it a little bit, right? Like I can always go back and make edits. And that has been like a very powerful thing for me this year is that you just like, it's just also like you said about the New Year's resolution, right? Like you don't need to wait for a new year to go after what you want to go after. You're never going to feel ready. I was so scared when I quit my full-time job to go to grad school full-time and like try to, I didn't even think at that point I had fully committed in my brain that I was going to start my own business. I was like, well, we'll just like, I got a couple of contract jobs. Like I have some opportunity to make ends meet while I go to grad school. Like, let's just see what happens because, well, I loved my patients at the hospital I worked at in DC. They were amazing. It just wasn't right for me. I love DC, but what was the point in my, mid-20s at sitting at a desk for 40 hours a week at a job I wasn't happy about? And like, I was like, this can't be my future. I took the chance and, sometimes I think, reflecting on this year, like, I feel like I said, like, is this real? Is this a mistake? Am I sitting with Shalane? Is my business thriving? Like, And, you, Jonathan, also being a great friend, and other people have reminded me that this is years and years of just showing up and consistently working hard and, staying motivated, staying positive. And, everything along the journey was never perfect. I've failed. We all fail. But the fact that over the years, I just keep showing up, believing in what I do, and just caring a lot about helping people and educating people has obviously kind of paid off this year, even though it feels a little surreal. So it's just kind of, taking those steps as to whatever the goal might be, and just, like I said, showing up. Like, working for yourself is hard. I like, staying motivated on those days where you really don't want to do anything. It's definitely been a great learning experience for sure.
The piece you said there about like, this isn't an overnight reality. It's like years and years of hard work paying off, I think really resonates. I mean, like, we're seeing it with what we do at work together. I'm seeing it with the podcast and like my own personal development. And I think it's like really fascinating to see people who have, there's like a fly in my face. See people who have been just like putting in the work, first have the work be seen, but then also seeing the fruit of that labor and yielding what you were hoping to yield. I mean, like, we talk about, you mentioned Shalane, but like, it's the perfect example of like, I have the same thing. Like, I get to work with professional athletes on a regular basis, but it's like, pinch me. How did we get here? And it's not the overnight success. It's like, no, we've been at this for X number of years in order to get to where we're at. The sign behind you says every damn day. What does that mean?
Yeah, that just kind of plays on to what you were saying. What I was saying is just showing up, just being consistent every damn day. And I don't want that to come off as like that hustle culture, like you have to work every day. That's something both personally and professionally I've worked very hard on this year, is not working 7 days a week. That can be every damn day, like me listening to my body saying, I need rest. I need to sleep a little bit more, or maybe yoga is the right thing for me today. But also just, like I said, in my professional career, okay, I don't want to show up today, but what are the things that I can tackle that are my priorities to be productive, to keep laying the groundwork to where I want to be in my career? And, kind of as I alluded to, as my athletic career kind of faded a little bit, it allowed me to really focus on my profession, my career, my business. And, maybe that's where that competitive, not that I'm competitive with other business owners. One thing I like about being a dietitian is all the other amazing dietitians that are out there who are supportive, who I can go to and be like, hey, what do you think about this idea, right? We can be a sounding board for each other, refer other clients to, but more competitive. It gives me a goal to strive for. How can I better serve my clients? How can I show up and create better content for Inside Tracker? How can I just be a better provider and person and friend? And a lot of that is showing up every day for, what my body needs, what my brain needs, and kind of chipping away and prioritizing and setting my goals.
I'm going to do a little David Roche style sponsor shout out like he does with Blue. I'd be remiss to not mention Tracksmith's No Days Off here. I used to give Tracksmith a hard time for the No Days Off calendar that they had until I realized that no days off can mean days off. And so for those who aren't familiar, Tracksmith comes out with a calendar every year that literally says no days off. And you check off each day that you get something done, that workout or strength routine, whatever. And this was around the time that Amelia, Caroline, and I launched Rest Day Brags. And we were like, what do you mean no days off? Days off every week. And I had just started working with David and taking a weekly rest day. And no days off doesn't mean that. No days off means no days off from what it takes to be excellent. So excellence isn't, luck of the draw with genetics. Excellence is being good frequently, or consistency, or every damn day, or like taking a bite out of the elephant one day at a time. We can go on and on with metaphors forever. But I think that's the whole point. The whole point is, and you've been a good reminder of this, like to give yourself grace. And when the body isn't feeling it, to take time off. And like, I ran 20 miles last week. I think it was like 20 miles exactly. And earlier in the year, I was peaking at almost 75. And it's just like, and I took, I think 3 or 4 rest days last week because of mental and physical need. And so I think that, as you said, like giving yourself grace is the best way to set up long-term growth and success versus like chasing something that's fleeting and then being broken.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question I've never asked you. Why is Chance's name Chance? And okay. I have a hypothesis here. So Chance is your dog.
Yes. Do you want to tell your hypothesis, or do you want me to answer it first?
Well, when we were talking about inertia and like starting out, you kept saying chance, and you kept saying like took a chance, this and that. And maybe Chance was doing something naughty and needed to be scolded in the moment, or maybe there was something more to it than that.
Yeah. So
I hope it's the latter.
Well, he can be quite dramatic, but I decided on Chance. So I adopted him after I quit said full-time job, moved back to Buffalo, left DC. Actually, the day I adopted him, it was the day I got back from the Boston Marathon in 2018, where we froze in the pouring rain that whole entire weekend. And I came back and the rescue brought the dog over, and I'm like, all right, this is my dog now. My mom was like, do you even have food or like puppy pads? I'm like, no. I was like, he just lives here now. But it was about taking chances. At that point in my life, I was taking a lot of chances, obviously, quitting my job and just kind of going for it. And, I took a chance on him. He's a rescue dog, and it was kind of one of those things when I applied to adopt him, I was like, I'm probably not going to get him. He's a puppy. Everybody wants puppies. And I was like, if I get him, it's meant to be. And I'm just going to like figure out how to have a dog, right? Because I know a puppy isn't a kid, but puppies are a lot of work. He was a terror when he was small. He pooped everywhere. He ate the carpet. He ran through screen doors. He was a nightmare. And people are always like, oh, well, I'll just wait to get a dog. And it's just kind of another one of those things, right? There's never going to be the perfect time. So it was all about taking chances. So
I love it.
Yeah. My manager, he's upper management at my business now. He's also HR, so I can't complain about him.
He's impossible to please.
Basically.
So let's sort of keep going on these big esoteric questions, actually. What does success mean to you?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I know where you got that question from. Success means to me, I guess framing success will be different for the different facets of my life. But success really just being able to help people. I've always I've said from the beginning, being able to help people is important to me, to educate, especially in the realm of my business and with athletes, is just creating healthy relationships with food, sustainable habits, nothing crazy. It's just, there's so much out there that, like I said, is negative, and to create stress, kind of like you were saying about, you took like 3 or 4 rest days last week. I know a lot of people, and there's, this isn't to shame anybody, that would be so remarkably stressful for them to take all those days off of exercise. And we all have enough stress in our lives. So how can we change our mindset and reframe these things so it's not another source of stress, right? It's giving ourselves grace, treating ourselves well, both mentally, physically, how we're eating, how we're moving. I became a dietitian because I love food. Everyone thinks, oh, food police, what can you can't have this, can't have that. Or at least like, people who don't really know what dietitians do. I'm sure your listeners are a little bit more in tune with, the dietitian's role, that it's just kind of, how can I help people get to a better place where, they just feel happier, they can improve their health, their lifestyle, they can do the things they love. A lot of that is running, swimming, biking for my clients. It's how to support those positive environments, and that they can look at what they did, whether it's including more vegetables or running a marathon PR. But yeah, I can tell them their success. But when a client can look and say like, hey, I did that, and that used to be really hard for me, but I did it and it was easy and I felt really good about it. And like, they can find their wins. They can say, hey, this is where I grew as an individual. And this is where I've worked really hard. And look at this, like, I can go to Christmas dinner and not feel anxious about eating cookies, whatever it might be for them. So like, that's where I really feel successful. And also the day I can get my dog a yard. I want a kitchen and a yard, a bigger kitchen. I have a kitchen, but I want like a real nice kitchen and my dog a yard. That's more of a joke.
Everything you do in life, you do for Chance.
Basically, yes.
It's all for the yard.
It's for his yard. He has many demands.
For the long yard.
Yeah.
We have some questions from your fans, namely Brad of episode 31.
I just want to have a side note before we do his question that Brad, thank you for the 79 kudos on Strava yesterday.
79 or 69?
79.
Wow.
He didn't count.
I think he miscalculated.
He must have.
So, Brad wants to know, what's the worst trending faux nutrition advice?
I feel like there's just so much out there that's horrible faux nutrition advice. But I think a big one that might not be new, but has been around for ages is this like whole idea that being skinny will make you a better athlete, a better runner, or even just healthier, even if you're not an active individual. That kind of health halo around thinness and race weight, and that you have to be X race weight to perform or you're never going to be a good runner. That's the biggest one. And maybe I just say that because it grinds my gears the most, because I've seen it, and I'm sure everybody else has seen it, lead to individuals who could be amazing athletes to being injured on the sidelines, like in and out every season, having this injury, like not being able to train to their ability and really like try to reach their goals, and also just so negatively impacting their health, their overall health, trying to be so thin, restricting foods. And this goes for both males and females. So not really a new one, but it definitely is one that hurts me inside the most, I would say.
What are the best and worst parts of owning and operating your own business?
Wow. I always joke and say that I knew owning my own business would be hard, but I don't think I was mentally prepared for how hard, which is fine. No regrets. I would say the best thing is I get to hang out with my dog all day. That's amazing. I get to also pick my clients. I feel like that's a very hard-earned luxury. That I can be selective about who I work with. People ask, well, why don't you take insurance? First of all, it's a one-woman business, and those 4 paws are not helping me bill through insurance. So I don't have the bandwidth for that. But also, like I said, people come to me because, they get to know me. They, we can work. I won't sign anyone where I feel like we won't work together well, right? It's nice to be able to say, like, you know what? I don't think I'm the best person to help you, right? Because that's the number one goal, like, is to help people reach their goals, whatever they might be. And I say, here's a list of dietitians who might be a good, that you can talk to. Like, they're great dietitians. I didn't become a dietitian to like be a millionaire. So, and it's just, I get to become like friends and develop these really great relationships with these people. And it's really awesome. I mean, I always feel cheesy when I post client wins on my Instagram story, but like, I get really happy and I really love it. So that is 100% amazing. The worst part of owning my business? Oof.
Don't say taxes.
I was going to say, well, every year on my taxes,
sorry, Brad,
I get hosed by the government. No, that's one of the first things I delegated was an accountant to help with the tax situation. I still get hosed, but I guess that's all part of being a business owner. I would just say it's just a lot to learn. It's things you don't learn in dietitian school. I remember I didn't, know what a CTA was, like all of those, like learning how to write copy for my website, designing my own website, keeping the, QuickBooks, like keeping my books in between for my accountant, all of kind of that admin stuff, which of course I know I can hire out. Maybe someday I'll get there, but also it's hard to kind of keep yourself away and create those boundaries, those healthy boundaries that you need. I always get anxious that people expect me to reply right away, or, I need to answer this message, or I need to be online. And, I've done much better at creating those boundaries between work and having life outside of work. But it's also learning, I feel like it's gotten better, but if I say no to an opportunity, is that person going to come back and like offer another, contract or, whatever it might be? So it's just kind of learning how to navigate so I don't overwork myself, because that's also not good for my RA. But it's worth it.
Fair point. I think my last question before we wrap for today, we're going to wrap for today. What's your favorite food joke?
Oh, Brad, I'm not good at food jokes. I don't even know if I know one off the top of my head. He's going to be so mad at me. I would say nice Haas, like Haas avocado.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I would say that would probably be it.
It's kind of cheesy, but...
Isn't that the point? Oh, I see what you did there. Dang it. You got me good.
And on that note, Stevie, thanks so much for taking some time to chat. If we want to follow along with Chance mostly, but also you and your nutrition and athletic endeavors, where can we find you on your corners of the internet?
Yes. You can find me on the Instagrams, Stevie Lyn. So StevielynLyn. My dog is great, so I would recommend following. I'm also there on the Twitterverse. The dog also makes many appearances there. But if you're actually interested in my business and how I work with my clients, you can visit StevieLynRD.com and learn more about my little business there.
Cool. Stevie and Chance, thanks so much for taking some time to chat, and hopefully we'll see you out there soon.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course.
That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too. This podcast and the accompanying music has been produced by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound. For the Long Run's logo was created by Vanessa Wolf of Sterling Wolf.